I am in Rome, Italy, at the center of the ancient city of Rome, and in this video we're going to walk through the historic Roman Forum and Palatine Hill, which contain what remains of the former capital of the Roman Empire. The Foro was the political and commercial heart of the ancient city, and this large archaeological park preserves the ruins of it, which are very little compared to what once stood here. This is the Arch of Titus. This classic Roman triumphal arch was built in the year 81 AD by Domitian after the death of his brother Titus. It also celebrated the success of Titus and his father Vespasian in putting down the Jewish rebellion that led to the fall of Jerusalem a decade earlier. The interior of the archway has panels depicting the Roman siege of Jerusalem. This is the original arch that served as inspiration for the various other triumphal arches built around the world, such as the Arc de Triomphe in Paris. There are some pretty great views in the Forum, and there are plenty of churches visible, as they were built directly over top this vile pagan metropolis. There are some water fountains here at the Forum, which is nice, especially since it's a scorching 105 degrees today. As this was the central marketplace and political center of Rome, 2,000 years ago this place would have been bustling. Even though these are primarily just partial ruins dating back to that era, they were parts of some magnificent structures. This was the site of Vespasian's warehouses, which Domitian turned into another shopping market. Palatine Hill, which will ascend soon, looms above the Forum from the south. That is the Church of Santa Francesca Romana. These foundations were probably part of Nero's Domus Aurea. A part of the palace still stands nearby. It was as big as Nero's ego. The brick structure with massive archways is the Basilica of Constantine and Maxentius, the largest building at the Forum. It was built around 312 AD, and it was the last great basilica built in Rome. A Roman basilica was a political building. It would have served as a courthouse and meeting chamber. Back in the ancient heyday, a variety of court cases would have been held inside these basilicas. These are the remains of the portico of a medieval house. I'm currently along the road leading to Carina, one of the oldest routes in Rome. This is the Temple of Romulus. Originally built in the 4th century AD to deify Romulus, no, not the founder of Rome, but the son of Maxentius. Luckily this temple was saved because it was enveloped by a Christian basilica in the 6th century. Inside the ancient temple is the archaeologist Giacomo Boni's hot air balloon. And sadly my DSLR camera of 4 years took its last shot in here. It permanently broke, and I didn't bring my other camera with me today, so I gotta use my iPhone for the rest of the video. This is the Temple of Antoninus and Faustina. The Baroque church maintains the porch of a Roman temple from the year 141, which is kind of an odd sight. It is believed that St. Lawrence was condemned to death at this location. The scattered statuary, column remnants, and tombs throughout the forum are really awesome. So this is the original Roman Forum. However, as the city's population boomed, there needed to be expansions, so Julius Caesar built a new forum nearby in 46 BC, and other emperors continued to build more, including Augustus, Trajan, and Nerva. Those forums can be viewed from above, and I did take a peek at some of those ruins in my Roman landmarks video. These are the remains of the Basilica Aemilia, a public hall that had lots of shops along its 100-meter facade. The ancient playwright Plautus wrote about the forum that it was teeming with, quote, lawyers and litigants, bankers and brokers, shopkeepers and strumpets, and good-for-nothings waiting for a tip from the rich. This is what remains of the Temple of Caesar, which was erected by Augustus in memory of Julius Caesar in 29 BC. Back here are the remains of the altar of Julius Caesar, which was where his body was cremated after his assassination in 44 BC. Now, cremation in such a prominent location was unusual, and the event was certainly politically charged, as Julius Caesar was successfully deified by his successor Octavian, later to be known as Caesar Augustus. So this is basically the grave of Julius Caesar. Here are some of the most beautiful ruins at the Forum. The Temple of Vesta. Though partially reconstructed in the 1930s, it shows what the circular temple was like. It was used by the cult of the Vestals, one of the oldest and most exclusive cults in Rome. Only 6 virgin priestesses belonged to it at a time. This is the Fontana di Juturna, one of the oldest and most important natural springs in Rome. Those 3 columns were part of the Temple of Castor and Pollux. Between these ruins is the Oratorio de 40 Martiri, an 8th century oratory that has some very faded frescoes inside. Here at the base of Palatine Hill is the Church of Santa Maria Antica, which was built in the 5th century, and is the oldest original Christian site here at the Roman Forum. There are lots of surviving frescoes inside. That is Santa Maria Regina, the oldest surviving Roman depiction of the Virgin Mary as a queen from the 6th century. They use modern lighting methods to highlight parts of the frescoes. These are some incredible Christian icons inside this ancient church, which appears to incorporate even more ancient ruins of pagans. This is a monumental structure. These are the remnants of the Basilica Julia, which was originally built in 46 BC, but was rebuilt after a fire that ravaged the Forum in 283 AD. A lot of the buildings and temples here were rebuilt over the centuries. Under all that scaffolding is the Column of Focus. Here is another classic triumphal arch, the Arch of Septimius Severus. It was erected in 203 AD in commemoration of the 10th anniversary of Septimius Severus's rule. The relief panels on it depict scenes of the emperor's exploits in Parthia and Arabia. Septimius also had 2 sons, whose names were carved on the arch, but one brother murdered the other, and then had his name erased from the arch. Apparently during the Middle Ages, this arch was half buried and served as the shelter for a barber shop. These are the ruins of the Temple of Saturn, some of the best in the Forum. It was built in 380 AD, but a temple to the god Saturn has stood at this spot since around 500 BC. And next to it is a surviving corner of the Temple of Vespasian and Titus. This is the Portico of the Harmonious Gods. This is the back side of the forum on the slope of Palatine Hill, atop which stood some very important Roman temples which are now gone, replaced with a Renaissance-era palazzo and museum complex designed by Michelangelo. Now, with the very limited time I have left, I'm gonna head up onto Palatine Hill. Atop the hill are the Farnese Gardens. The garden was created in the 1550s by the wealthy Farnese family. This was the first private botanical garden in Europe. Wow, there are some amazing views from up here. There's an aerial view of the Colosseum, which was built just down the road from the forum. And here's a full view of the Roman Forum and Palatine Hill. According to legend, this is the hill upon which Romulus and Remus were raised by a wolf in a cave, and there is evidence from the Iron Age to suggest that people were living up here in the 9th century BC. Palatine was primarily a high-end residential district. Some very wealthy and legendary Roman figures lived up here. Augustus was born atop this hill and lived here throughout his life. His residence is still standing. The great orator and politician Cicero lived up here. Unfortunately, I don't think there are any surviving ruins of his house. There is a labyrinth of ruins up here, and the park is going to close soon, so I certainly won't see everything. All of this is the Domus Flavia, the remains of a grand palace built by the Emperor Domitian in 81 AD. He was the third emperor of the Flavian dynasty. Of course, the Colosseum was originally known as the Flavian Amphitheater, so they were very powerful and wealthy. The Domus Flavia had two wings. One was the official palace, while the other part was known as the Domus Augustana and was for private use by the family. This room here was known as the audience chamber. It would have been massive and highly decorated, as it was where people would have an audience with the emperor. Here are the ruins of the Temple of Apollo and the portico of the Danaids. The temple was dedicated in 28 BC. This area is known as the Augustan Sanctuary and Residential Complex. It was a late Republican neighborhood with lots of fancy aristocratic houses. This is the House of Livia, a surviving well-preserved house where Augustus lived with his wife Livia for a time. Here are some very old cisterns from the 6th century BC. These are some old service rooms from a big house. These are the excavated remains of the Temple of Victoria, which was built in 294 BC. This is an Iron Age hut village, which has long been believed to be the remains of the village founded by Romulus after murdering his brother Remus. I was really hoping to go inside the House of Augustus, but they closed it early. Dang it. This was the Temple of Magna Mater. While there's a lot more to see here at Palatine Hill and the Roman Forum, they are now kicking everyone out. So there's plenty more to see on a future visit. Anyways, it was incredible to see the ruins of ancient Rome. These are some incredible monuments left over from one of the greatest ancient empires in history. I hope you enjoyed this visit to the Foro in Palatine. If you did, then please like the video, share it, and subscribe to my channel. Also take a look at my other videos featuring historic places, museums, natural wonders, and more here in Italy, across Europe and America. I did film some other videos here in Rome on this visit, including the Colosseum, which was freaking awesome. That episode is linked in the description. Thanks for watching.